Welcome to the Founder Hour podcast. Before we get into the episode, just a quick word about our sponsor, Outer. You know I've raved about Outer before, and I love my Outer sofa, outdoor dining table, and chairs. I've had them for over a year, and let me tell you, they've been through everything from rainstorms to scorching sun and still look brand new. That's because Outer makes outdoor furniture that's actually designed for the outdoors. From using incredibly durable and sustainable materials to developing innovative solutions like the Outer Shell Cover, which protects my sofa and dining table against dust, debris, and dirt. No more soggy cushions or dusty tabletops. My Outer setup is always clean, dry, and ready to be enjoyed anytime I want. Head to liveouter.com/thefounderhour to see Outer's range of outdoor furniture, fire pits, and accessories. The Founder Hour listeners get an exclusive 10% off for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply. So elevate your outdoor space with Outer. That's liveouter.com/thefounderhour. Here we go. Aaron Levie, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great to have you. I would say it's nice to meet you, but fun fact, we've actually met before. I think it was like 10 years ago at USC. You were getting honored. I think it was for the Entrepreneur of the Year. You remember that? You were getting honored for the Entrepreneur of the Year award by the Greif Center, and we met then, and I think I have a photo somewhere.
Good times. What were you doing at the time?
I was a student at SC. I was the president of the Entrepreneur Club, and so they had invited me to the sort of the event, and I was a big fan of yours then, big fan of yours now. I remember, I think I told you, I was like, you're my favorite tech CEO to follow on Twitter. And you said something like, that's because no other tech CEOs are on Twitter. And times have changed.
That has been the case. Yes, there are more on Twitter these days. It was a pretty easy niche to own at the time. But yeah, thanks for having me on. Good to see you.
Likewise. As I always do, I like to kind of get started from the very beginning and learn about your background and your story all the way up to, and then we'll talk about Box and everything you're up to now and your thoughts on AI, which is obviously a big thing now. And so, I think I saw you grew up in like Colorado and then moved to Washington. What was early life like? What were you into? What kind of kid were you?
Yeah. So I was born in Boulder, Colorado. Lived there until I was about 10, and then we moved to Seattle. I was very fortunate. I had parents that, and I still have parents that encouraged my kind of random hobbies that emerged over time, and I was lucky that we were probably a little bit more ahead of the curve on technology adoption. So this was the kind of early to mid 90s. When whether it was AOL rolling out, dial up, or the early kind of Windows 95 PCs. So we kind of got access to a lot of those early technologies, and so basically by 94, 95, I was on the internet. In my free time, spending a lot of time on the internet, starting, first as more of just a social kind of curiosity, joining chat rooms and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually, when we moved to Seattle, I had a next door neighbor that was doing programming when he was 10 or 11 years old. And he was just like the super nerd. And so it's, incredibly good fortune when you have your kind of basically next door neighbor that is a programmer,
Right. It's like the classic, like Steve Jobs had Wozniak, and like I've had several people on the show who are in the tech industry and sort of had someone like that in their neighborhood. And so I think, I feel like when I have kids, when I decide where to live, I'm gonna have to survey the neighborhood and just like see who's a tech whiz out there.
I mean, there's like one very specific factor, which is that you have to go find a neighborhood where like there's some kid taking apart like random electronics, in their garage, and like you could just go find the house next to that person. You're good.
Success is inevitable, right?
Your kid will start a company. So he was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, doing Visual Basic, and just writing scripts for a variety of things. And so definitely like the Wozniak, Paul Allen of the relationship. And so, as I got a little bit older, mid teens, we started building just startup ideas, websites. We had a search engine that we created. We had some random desktop software. We pulled some other friends into some of our entrepreneurial endeavors, and so I'd say most of my teenage years were defined by just doing random startup ideas, coming up with random things that we could try and sell to people. And I, again, super lucky to be in an environment where that was encouraged and supported, as opposed to like, what is this, kind of crazy stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, I feel like there's always this moment, for any entrepreneur that you sort of realize, or you get exposed to someone throughout history, or even like in your immediate circle, that has started a business and been successful, and you're like, wow, like that is actually something that's possible. Like I don't have to go work, at a company for the rest of my life. I could like start something and make it big. Was there anyone like that for you that you looked up to, that you said, this is someone that inspires me to go out and be an entrepreneur?
Maybe if I could like perfectly tap into, my, the LLM that is my brain, it's, maybe I'd find the parameters that, were triggered by that. But I would say, my upbringing was otherwise relatively kind of classic, in that sense. My dad, is and was a chemical engineer. He had a job in a large company. My mom, was a speech language pathologist. She worked in schools. So it was, certainly I didn't, learn about entrepreneurship directly from them. I think it was probably stuff that I just stumbled on through, again, spending just an unbelievable amount of time on the internet, and just being super curious about how is it possible that these people could just go and create their own thing and then make money from it. And maybe I just got lucky, like my parents didn't give me enough allowance, and so just like there's like probably an optimal amount of allowance where you get enough where you can like sign up for online services, but not enough where you don't want more money. And so maybe I was in that kind of sweet spot of needing just a little bit more money, and so trying to find ways to get it. But I think it was probably less that I discovered entrepreneurship, and more that I discovered that the internet was something that you could build something on, and then release software to people. And so that was probably more the thing that brought me into realizing you could start businesses in this space. And then, so I grew up in Seattle, where Microsoft is just ever present. And so it was like not, you sort of saw the success of Microsoft, kind of around you. And, and so that was probably the closest thing to entrepreneurship, extreme entrepreneurship, but that was at least in the zeitgeist in Seattle at the time.
Yeah. And now in a world where so many things are remote, I always think about that. It's like the place that you're in, the things that you see on a day-to-day basis, subconsciously, you just like, it helps shape, a lot of what your decisions are and what paths you end up taking. But I think I saw you wanted to be a film director early on. Were you just into movies, or was that just part of also like wanting to just build things, create things?
Yeah. So probably the authoritative list would be, I had three, maybe extreme interests. The first was actually magic. So I did magic in kind of middle school and high school. And there was a brief period for at least kind of 2 or 3 years where I actually wanted to be a professional magician. I for a variety of reasons, eventually realized that was, maybe not the most either lucrative path or one that I'd have the kind of stamina for the long run.
Was it like card tricks or like David Blaine style stuff?
Definitely not David. I mean, if you mean David Blaine style stuff in the sense of like you put like a needle through your face, definitely not that. It was probably more between card tricks and wannabe more physical illusions. So like I would do like construction projects of like building giant boxes that you get locked up in and stuff. So
full circle of boxes.
Yes, yeah, a lot of boxes in my life. So I did that for a bit. That was fun. Kind of hobby / made a couple dollars by doing shows. But it was kind of eventually clear that was maybe not the right path. Got into film right around the same time, and then kind of pursued that for a while. Made some kind of films in high school. Thought like maybe I could be like a producer or something. And got really into that world. And actually, that's why I went to USC. I was trying to kind of marry up film and production and distribution and, maybe a technology angle. This was sort of right when you could finally watch movies online. So I got pretty into the idea of sort of streaming. And so I even applied to film school. They rejected me, but still decided USC was a good place to.
I think Steven Spielberg got rejected by USC Film School like 3 times. So
yes, yeah, fair. But I've seen his films and I've seen mine. Let's just say it was a bad choice to reject him and not me. But so I got into film and actually did 2 internships in film, and one of which was at Paramount Pictures. Where actually we sort of pseudo got the idea for Box during that time. And then the final interest during this sort of same period in high school was the internet. And so basically simultaneously, doing magic shows, making films, creating websites. And it was kind of like, let's see which one works. And the website one kind of won out.
Yeah, it's like when you look at someone's life and some of the things that they're interested in early on, it really you start connecting the dots, looking backwards of like, how or why they ended up where they ended up, why how they are now, and you're someone that I've always admired in terms of having like really great stage presence. Like you're just a natural up there, right? Like and I feel like that's stuff that sometimes you're born with, but being I think a magician especially, like you have to control the crowd, you have to control like the sort of what's just that presence that you have is so important to what you're doing, I feel like. And I'm just curious, like, was that something that you actually intentionally tried to develop from a young age, or was it something that is just natural for you?
I mean, I was probably, if it wasn't magic, I would have done some other, kind of thing that would have been similar. I guess I was always more probably a bit outspoken, some kind of form of undiagnosed ADD, just talking a lot and whatnot. And so magic was sort of a good outlet for that. But you do get a lot of hours of practice in, certainly having to be on stage and work with audiences.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like you just can't be someone that overthinks too much if you want to sort of be, quick-witted and just like have that kind of skill. But yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be fair to say I don't overthink. So yes, except for there's some categories where I do, but it's usually just mostly around product. So
right. So eventually, you ended up when you started Box, you started it with 3 friends of yours that I think you met like early on, middle school, high schools, Dylan, Sam, and Jeff. Tell me about how you guys met and what kind of got you guys to click early on as friends.
Yeah. So Jeff was the kind of Wozniak neighbor, and like again, some of my first interactions with him were you'd go over to his house and literally he was taking apart like a sewing machine just to see how like the motors kind of interacted with each other, or like he'd have a computer that he was like rebuilding from scratch, and again you have to imagine this is like an 11-year-old, so he definitely was doing some pretty strange stuff for his age. So that was kind of cool to have around in my orbit. Dylan was somebody that spent a lot of time with more on kind of social side, but then we eventually did kind of film related stuff and some kind of played around with some business angles. And then Sam moved into town and at first was friends with Jeff, and he was super technical, was sort of a super geek. He was doing like audio engineering, some computer programming. And so sort of like, I think in a very weird way, I sort of, a lot of I had plenty of other friends that I did projects with and different business ideas, but eventually sort of this became a kind of a core group of people that we would go bounce ideas off each other. And spend a lot of time brainstorming, different ways to have startups or whatnot. We eventually went off to different colleges. Dylan and I are a year older than Jeff and Sam, so kind of a couple years of different things going on in our lives, and then eventually through college, I came up with a few different ideas that didn't work, and then I had this idea for Box. And basically tried to pitch Dylan, Jeff, Sam at different points, and then over about a year-long period, that kind of group, kind of eventually came together to go and deliver and kind of build the company.
Yeah. What were some of those ideas that you had before Box that didn't work?
Yeah, so starting in high school, we had Jeff and I started a search engine called Zizap. You can still check it out on archive.org. Go to like 2001, 2002 time period. So if you go to zizap.com, Zizap, that was a search engine we launched, and it was like there was no reason why anybody would ever use the search engine. It was worse than Google. It was it was kind of fast, but only because the index was so small. We didn't even crawl the web. You had to kind of submit your website, and then we would list it. So basically zero value proposition for the customer. Purely just kind of, I think, we just wanted to put together something that was technically interesting. And I think there was probably a lesson in there that I didn't ever write down or know I was learning, but eventually sort of shaped future ideas, which is you literally have to have a customer value proposition that is differentiated. You can't just put something out there, expecting anybody's going to care just because you build something. So Zizap was one of the first more real ideas, but again, there was really nothing that useful about it. Had a couple other random ideas and startups that kind of meandered. One was one in college was a website. You'll probably appreciate this from the kind of SoCal standpoint. But like in 2003, 2004, there wasn't yet Facebook. And so when you're on college, when you're in, campus, you want to figure out what events are going on, what's happening around you. So had a website that is the typical kind of event social network type experience.
What's funny is that I feel like that idea has been toyed around with for so long. Like even today, that's still no one's figured it out yet. No one's quite.
It will never work. No, it won't work. It's a death trap. But it's actually the perfect. If you ever had to have the CIA probably does these things to watch for who future CIA agents are going to be. Right. At least I'm making that up from movies I've seen. I'd say that if there was ever a way to be who is going to start a website later in life, you should just go to every college campus and be who's creating the online event website for the college campus, and that person is
it's a prerequisite.
It's prereq, and they're going to start something. Who knows if it'll be good or not? But that is your instant filter. Is the bored college kid who can't find anything to do starts the website to try and find stuff. So we did that. It kind of was okay. It was also just the ROI on labor to benefit was pretty low. So that eventually disbanded, and then eventually kind of a fortuitous set of events. I had to do a project in a business class I was taking, which was to review a market opportunity or market category and do effectively, I don't remember if this was literally the task, but do a SWOT analysis on the market. So figure out, what are the opportunities in the space? What are the weaknesses? And so I chose I don't exactly know the reason why I chose this, but I chose online storage. And so I analyzed the online storage market, and this was the same time I was doing an internship where we were using kind of legacy traditional enterprise software for sharing and collaborating on files. So between the internship, which was showing me what the world was using, and then this marketing class where I got to just analyze the existing market, I realized there was this opportunity where, well, what if you just store data online, made it accessible from anywhere? Could we do it cheaper? Could we do it better? Could we have it as a better user experience than anybody else that was out there? And that was kind of the light bulb moment. I don't remember if this was a literal feeling I had, but in retrospect, it kind of the composite feeling should have felt like this, which was holy crap, I think I've stumbled on something where just nobody has built a modern version of this to solve this problem. And I it was surprising because you're wait a second, this makes no sense. Everybody creates files. Everybody has data. We're running around with thumb drives, trying to move information around. You can store that online at this point. You could access it online. And there's no company that has really delivered a modern version of that. So I remember being holy shit, I think I'm onto something. And got a couple friends to kind of look at it. It wasn't it was from afar. So if you weren't in my head, it probably seemed like a relatively boring thing. Okay, so you can upload a file to the internet and then access it from anywhere. Okay, womp womp. But I just, for some reason, I got convinced that it was the most exciting thing ever. So I eventually lured Dylan into it first. We built a prototype and launched it in early 2005, and then it basically started to just get traction, like not overnight, but not overnight. Like people like on the internet discovered it. We promoted it. More people started showing up and signing up, and we were like, wow, we might be actually onto something. So that was kind of the origin story of Box.
Yeah, clearly it was something that the world needed, or these folks needed, and they just you just needed to present it to them in a nice way.
Yeah.
But what was the state of? I mean, was cloud computing even a thing back then? Like, was it even being talked about?
No, certainly the term cloud computing, I think it had technically existed because of some random kind of like engineering architecture diagrams at the time, but there was no, there was no AWS, there was no, certainly Azure, Google, et cetera. So like the idea of cloud computing was a very niche topic. The thing that did exist was basically co-located servers. So you could go on the internet and like find somebody to host your website. You didn't have to like go to a data center, but it wasn't it wasn't really a pooled resource. It wasn't really sort of burst capacity. You rented a server, you put a website on the server, that was it, which was fine. But it wasn't. It didn't give birth to the cloud computing era. So that I didn't even know of these companies at the time, but the only companies that would have existed that we considered kind of SaaS or cloud today, Salesforce certainly existed, NetSuite existed, this company SuccessFactors existed. I think Workday maybe was launched like 6 months prior or something, but that's kind of about it. So that was like the state of SaaS products. There wasn't, certainly there was no Slack, there was no Zoom. There was no, again, the list goes on. Everything we use today did not exist back then. And so we got extremely lucky because, and this is the part where, there is an element of, there's like lots of elements of luck in entrepreneurship, to be clear, but like this is certainly one that is lucky, which is like, are you thinking about a problem at the moment when there's enough factors in your, working in your favor to kind of create the space to go and do the company. So like if we had been thinking about this problem 3 years prior, I don't think we'd exist today. And if we'd been thinking about the problem, 2 years later, there'd be no need for us to exist. So there was clearly like a 1 to 2 year window where
you think someone would have built it if you
100%. It was the most obvious thing of all time. This is why I was so shocked. It was like we invented almost, the things we invented are like nobody will even, kind of understand that we invented these things, but like very, very strange idiosyncratic things. Like how do you share a file with a URL that is hashed that you can give different permissions to? Like we had to do like a lot of the early product, kind of experience work to kind of figure out what would this category look like over time. But the idea of storing data online and getting access to it from anywhere is that everybody eventually would have come to the conclusion that is the only right way to do to do file storage. That was very obvious. So we had a 2 year window where if we had not started right then, we would have been blown out of the we wouldn't exist. We would be on to a different idea.
How did you know what to build, like in terms of the prototype? Like, I know you had like played around with computers and kind of had some like kind of basic knowledge, but did you know like exactly how to build it? It sounds like, you mentioned Jeff was the WOS guy, but like did you have enough technical background and understanding of like how to build this thing early on?
Yeah. So my role in those early days was I was the front end designer and engineer. So I would code the literal interface of the application and design the kind of front end experience, and then we had some contract engineers that basically wrote the back end, all of the file system functionality, all of that. And so I kind of played designer and product manager and a little bit of front end kind of engineering, and then I sort of got some help, and Sam, who will enters the story officially like 9 months later, would help me with like CSS work and stuff. And so that was kind of the early days. But yeah, most of my personal energy was product, and then figure out how to grow the thing.
Customers are rushing to your store. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. Shopify POS is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/founderhour. Once again, go to shopify.com/founderhour to take your retail business to the next level today. So you end up dropping out of college or taking a leave of absence. And I'm not sure if you've ever exercised that since then, but or if you would.
Not yet.
But
maybe at some point.
Yeah, sure. You drop out, you move up to Silicon Valley. I mean, it sounds like that was the place to be. Even at that time, especially at that time. You have this. It's funny because I've interviewed someone else that sent a cold email to Mark Cuban and ended up getting an angel investment. It sounds like that's what you guys did too.
It's a real thing. It's a very real thing.
It was like a thing back then. It was like Mark Cuban's the guy. Like we need to get to this guy.
I mean, Mark Cuban. So first of all, Mark's fantastic and still is today, but you have to like put yourself in 2005, right? So 19 years ago, if you wanted to find somebody on the internet that was like insanely rich and they had like their email address like publicly listed and they like were like a super online person and they were tracking what was going on the internet, there was probably less than 5 people like on the entire internet that would qualify as that. Like insane dispensable income, incredibly tuned into technology and out there enough where you can actually just reach out to them. Like that was like not a thing. Like the VCs back then, there was, 20 firms or 30 firms, mostly in Silicon Valley, a few in Seattle. Like they had like, their email was contact us at, vcfirm.com. And like, God help you if you think you're going to get a response.
Yeah. Black hole.
Yeah. Black hole. So that was a game of like, do you know somebody who can get you an intro? Like that was how the industry operated. And I mean, if there's any metaphor for the or just at least, kind of like, symbolism for how much of a change, 20 years is of the shift of kind of the power dynamic, it's just even this. Like right now, VCs are doing everything they can to get as much deal flow as possible because money is effectively abundant. But back then, money was scarce, and there weren't even that many good ideas, to be clear. So it's not like ideas were abundant, but the money at least was very scarce, and so they were in the power position. So it was very, very hard. Every story about how hard it was to find money 20 years ago was completely true. So we sort of cobbled together some angel funds from these 4 investors in Seattle that we were deeply appreciative of. They gave us $80,000, which let us pay the hosting bills and do some early online marketing. We pitched a whole bunch of VCs, both in the Valley that we didn't get email responses to, some in Seattle, and this was again, this is 2005. So 2005 was a period where basically most people had just lost money from the .com bust. They were like in the process of winding down their .com investments that didn't work. And we were, kind of a replica of the .com, people that lost money. We were like, hey, we're some college students. We got this idea. And they're like, yeah, we've done that before. Like, it doesn't work. Like we just, all that happens is we lose all our money. And it was probably even worse because we were actually in college and we were not even pitching you that we'd drop out of college. We were just like, we raise money right now. So we were, it was just Dylan and I at the start. So we were just pitching, can we raise, money from you? We got rejected by everybody. Mark Cuban was the only person that said yes. He didn't even say yes with any conditions, like you have to drop out or whatever. He liked the idea. He kind of knew this was where the internet was going. And so he sent us a check. We were in college. There's nothing like literally getting a physical check in the mail to your college apartment that is like signed Mark Cuban for like $300,000. Like it was just like, a very mind-blowing experience. But he sends us this check. We put it in the bank. We use the money to grow, and then eventually gets to a point where there's just too much work to do. So we dropped out in the middle of our junior year. Drove up to we were in Seattle during winter break. We drove down to to Berkeley, and then got Sam and Jeff to quit the school in the following few months. And then we were living and working out of Berkeley for about 9 months. We raised our Series A from Draper Fisher Jurvetson, and then moved to Palo Alto. And that was kind of the beginning of us being a real company. Like, we had an office. We lived in the office, but we actually at least had a relatively commercial looking office space. We had a couple $1 million in the bank. And this was sort of now, Box in the real startup period versus just, us doing it as kind of a project with some funding.
Yeah. And so Box started primarily as a consumer business, like a B2C. Folks could, I think I saw that it was like the max they would pay was like $10 a month or something like that to have their data. And then at some point, several years into it, you transitioned to B2B. And I know you've talked a lot about why enterprise software is so sexy. And I just want to kind of talk about what prompted that early on. And I think maybe a lot of people are afraid that it's so hard to change the status quo when it comes to enterprise. Like, what people have been doing for so long, like convincing these mega organizations to like change everything about their processes. Yeah. But I don't know if naivete played a role in it at the time, or if you knew exactly 100%. Like, yeah.
No, like literally 100%. Like, if I knew then what I know now about enterprise, I think it would be a bigger struggle for us to do what we did. I would have second guessed so many decisions that ended up being the decisions that worked. If I had all the knowledge that I now have, and it's actually, ironically, it's why I've not invested in certain things that have ended up exploding, because I've overthought it. Of like, I don't know, like, if enterprises are going to be able to buy this thing. And, but yeah, being naive was 100% an asset at the time. And we basically started, it wasn't so much B2C as much as B to like I, and I in this case is like individual. Like, we didn't care if you were a consumer or a professional or a student. It was like, we just need you as a human to use our software. And then what happened was, it was a mix of factors. Our first venture capitalist, Josh Stein, he had been on a board or a couple boards of enterprise software startups and he was kind of looking at us and saying, hey, you might actually have this model where people can bring you into the organization, and then you could sell them more of an enterprise edition of Box. And we didn't totally grok, what that meant at first, or the importance of it, but that was kind of lingering around us. Our fifth employee, our first external hire, had worked at Sun Microsystems as an intern. And so he had some experience in the enterprise, and he was kind of looking at this and saying, hey, wait a second, like, we're getting a lot of adoption with enterprise domains. Maybe we could monetize that better. So a mix of factors kind of got us to really study the B2B space a bit more. And then Jeff, again, the kind of Wozniak type character, also kind of had a lot of I think, pragmatism and he had a lot of reality and kind of realistic kind of views, which is like, hey, I think we're going to get absolutely crushed in the consumer space by Google, Microsoft, Facebook, whomever, because unfortunately, like, there's just not a lot of differentiation between what we're going to be able to deliver and what they're going to be able to deliver, and they're going to be able to subsidize it with something else. So if you can subsidize free storage, then we can't charge for it, and we're totally screwed. So basically, probably the three of them get the most credit, and then everybody, I think, around eventually converged. I was probably the biggest holdout. I kind of wanted to hold on to this consumer-esque kind of approach, but eventually, rationality prevailed, and we just realized, like, we've got to pivot. So we pivoted the company, but again, good fortune, I would say, kind of struck, which is because of our starting in the kind of consumer individual side, we saw that actually as an asset that we should kind of continue to exploit, which is, well, what if there's a new era of enterprise software, which is you don't have to go to the CIO every time you want to do a sale, but the end user actually brought you in, and then the CIO purchased like an enterprise edition that had better security, better governance, better compliance, and we kind of like had a bit top down, a bit bottom up, and kind of that was the business model. So we think we thought at the time, like the same way that like Flickr, which was an early photo sharing tool, kind of spread to end users, we said let's continue to exploit that element of virality, so freemium, but just layer on this enterprise component that no one really was doing at the time. And that was, again, kind of great fortune that we had started, more focus on the individual or the consumer that let us then go and take advantage of that for an enterprise play. So we got to ride this wave of viral enterprise software that basically created all the leads for us. And then we layered on a sales team on top of that went and monetized those leads. And that, to me, today, still to this day, I think that's kind of the cleanest business model in enterprise. And I don't think I could ever, I can't imagine doing a company that wasn't that, where you get the end user to bring you in and then you sell the enterprise edition on top of it.
From a product standpoint, if you were to do that SWOT analysis today and looking back, what would you say were the biggest competitive advantages? I know you've talked about product design, but what are the biggest sort of core advantages that got Box to a place where like the switching costs were so high, right? Like if other competition comes up, for a company to just like pick up and take everything and shift it over, like there has to be some sort of switching cost there for them to decide against that. And so like looking back, what are those things, those factors?
Yeah. So I think the things that we eventually discovered was going to be our kind of core intellectual property strategically was we're going to build an end user experience that we at least strive to make as good, if not better, than the best consumer experiences. So you're going to not suffer like you used to do when you used enterprise software. We're going to hopefully deliver a great user experience. So that makes the end user able to use and adopt the software. We're going to go deeper than any consumer company ever would on enterprise functionality for data security, governance, data management, all of that. And then we're going to do this in an architecture that is sort of 100% cloud, 100% multi-tenant, which means that all of our customers get the value of all of our innovation the moment that we deliver it. And so we're going to kind of innovate like a consumer company at that pace. All of our customers are going to get the sort of benefit of that innovation. But again, we're going to do it with a level of depth of an enterprise software company that are a large Fortune 500 or Fortune 50 company is going to be used to. And at the time, there was I think a pretty clear belief that those things were in conflict and there was going to be an extreme tension. Like you can't build simple user experiences in enterprise software because you have to load it up with all these buttons and all these settings. And our conviction was, well, if we just spent more time on design, we could hide some of those buttons and we can hide some of those settings and we don't have to expose them to the user. And we can, create features that don't get in the way of the end user, having a great experience. And so we just spent more time on that and we held ourselves to that set of principles that I think most other companies just eventually kind of, gave in on. And we just didn't. We were more stubborn than I think anybody else in the space of we're going to keep it simple, but we're going to not sacrifice enterprise depth for that simplicity and vice versa.
Yeah, as Box grew, for someone that virtually didn't have much job experience besides like internships and stuff before starting this company, you have to sort of evolve as a leader, right, of people and build this culture out. And you've clearly built an incredible culture at Box, which I've heard about. It's a fun, playful place, but also like a work hard, play hard type of place. What were, I guess, how did you go about developing those leadership skills and then also the culture over time that you can speak to in terms of like, is there anything you did? What were some challenges that maybe you faced along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to study everything I could about management and leadership and business in general. So you can kind of learn the different ticks that people have and what are the different, kind of best approaches people take to leading teams and managing teams. I've been super fortunate to have, folks that have been willing to kind of give me advice or provide mentorship over the years on a variety of topics that have helped us build up the organization. And then probably most fundamentally is just like the team itself that, whether it's the executive team or the extended team, if you can do a really good job, hiring the best people, organizing them and aligning them in the right way, and then you have hopefully a strategy that kind of works and makes sense and when tested against the market is sort of actually a good strategy. That's kind of like my job. is we have to have a very good strategy. We have to have an incredible team that can go and execute on that strategy. And then the only thing that I probably do in addition to that at a very kind of personal level and like my personal contribution is just a deep focus on the product experience. What are we going to deliver? What are we building? Why are we building it? And just making sure that we're kind of always going in the right direction from a product standpoint. And in that sense, actually, it's interesting. My job is less different than I think most people would think, going from a 4-person startup to 2,700 employees. Like most of my week, it looks at least like conceptually similar to my week, 18 years ago. It's a lot of time in product meetings. It's a lot of time looking at pixels and product designs. It's a lot of time with customers, learning from them, asking them questions, trying to certainly sell our vision. It's time with the team, the leadership team, the extended team, people working on projects. So everyone kind of imagines that you kind of graduate up to this sort of very different type of job, and I think that can certainly happen. And so I'm sure I'm sure that there's definitely CEOs that all of a sudden your work shifts to you got to go spend a lot of time with the government or something, and then your time literally is different. But in at least our case, it's product, it's culture, it's customers, it's general kind of keeping the organization aligned and moving in the same direction. A little bit with investors because we're public now, but that's kind of my time and that's where it all goes.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, like a lot of companies when they go public, a lot of the founders end up staying a bit and then maybe leaving because they don't want to handle the public CEO pressure and just like that role. Yeah. But it seems like you've just welcomed that with open arms and have just tackled that next kind of thing too. And has it been like a good experience for you, like in terms of do you enjoy it? Yeah.
There's some parts that I enjoy for sure. Some parts are more, like very stressful or not maybe where I'd want to be spending all my time, but it kind of just comes with the territory. You just sort of have to do it. I think it's one of these things where in the moment there's lots and lots of stressful things that I wish I didn't have to, deal with and have as stresses, going into the earnings calls and all that, or areas where you just have to spend a lot of time, with investors and whatnot. So, but then the long arc of it, when you zoom out, and you look at it on a monthly view or a quarterly view or an annual view, it's, sort of generally directionally positive, right? You're getting, obviously liquidity for employees. You have a kind of an up-to-date, relatively fair valuation for the company. You always maybe feel you're undervalued by a certain amount, but directionally it kind of, goes where the company's performance goes. You get feedback from the market on your strategy, both in the measurement of your stock price, but also of your investors, sentiment. And so over the long run, I think those are all actually decently positive attributes. And so I don't sort of mind, or I feel positive about being public on those things. And it kind of creates a certain pressure in the organization to execute. You have this quarterly operating rhythm that is just built into being public. And I think that's actually a pretty positive thing as well.
Yeah, when you talk to different founders and CEOs and kind of just hear about the things that they consume, whether it's books or podcasts or just like content or throughout the years that has like sort of guided their principles and their approach to business, it sometimes runs the gamut. Like some people are like reading just business management books. Some people are consuming like history and philosophy and politics. Like, what has it been for you mostly?
Yeah, I admire and I'm jealous of the people that get into like, Roman history. I that has not clicked for me yet. It's I think maybe like with a little bit more time, I'll tap into that part of my brain. But back in the day, 25 years ago in high school or something, like there were definitely people that wanted to watch the History Channel of ancient Roman civilization and how it all kind of evolved, and for me, I would rather read a biography on some entrepreneur. So my high school days were like, how did David Geffen build a record label and media empire?
Operator is a great book on David Geffen.
There you go.
Yeah. Huge book, very big book, but great book.
Great great book. So that was my high school reading, where somebody was doing stuff around Caesar. So
Yep. All right. Let's talk about AI. This is the big topic right now. I know it's one that you are very passionate about. You tweet a lot about it. You've talked a lot about it. I guess we can go so many different directions with this, but I guess how are you looking at AI when it comes to Box specifically, and then we can kind of broaden it from there.
Yeah.
In terms of general. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of these things which is without knowing it, it's kind of the culmination of, again, 18, 19 years of work of, wait a second, we just did all of this work to be able to securely store data at scale, 100 plus billion files in the platform. We have all this information that obviously our customers are managing. And we now have this incredible magical technology that just emerged that lets us now actually understand that data and interact with it as if a human is the one doing it. And that was just never possible before. So for decades and decades, anything that was inside of a database, largely numbers, you could calculate, you could compute, you could summarize, you could synthesize, you could analyze, but you could never do that with words. You could never do that with pictures. You could never do that with videos. And so all the content that we store is actually that second part of information. That's 90% of the data in an enterprise. So now, for the first time ever, we can take 90% of the data in an enterprise and ask it questions, and have a computer go do things with that information that previously only a human could do. Go summarize this contract, find risks in the contract, go process this invoice, route it to the right department, read this movie script and find, do a summary of the plot and all the different scenes that we need to shoot at different locations. AI can now do that in a second. Any of those tasks, it can do it in a second. And so for us, this is this huge breakthrough, which is we can unleash a new era of productivity around how we work with our information. So we're all in. It feels more similar to the early days of Box than any other point in our history. We have a kind of almost mini startup in the company working on all of these things. Obviously, it has to kind of get embedded into everything we're doing, but it's like a 15-hour a day type kind of execution effort. And it's we're betting the company on it, and it's something that we have huge conviction is going to be the future of all software.
Yeah, and it's something that has been discussed for a long time, but it just seems like in the last few years it's really boomed. And I'm curious why you think that is. Is it just because OpenAI and like GPT, like they kind of came out with this new kind of innovative thing, or are there other reasons why you think like this? There's just been like this convergence in the last few years where it just everywhere and every company's adopting AI and calling themselves an AI company. Yeah.
Yeah, I would honestly give 99.99999% credit to just OpenAI. Like, if ChatGPT hadn't happened, I think the world would look completely different from an AI standpoint. It was the necessary product experience to highlight what now AI is capable of, and almost any other form factor that they had launched would not have caused that to happen. So whoever came up with that idea of like, we're gonna have a chat interface with a sidebar, and we're gonna have like it just happened to be the perfect interface, the perfect modality for AI to become kind of understood by consumers. And then that was necessary to then cause businesses to say, hey, how should we embed this into our organization, whether it's our software or our operations? So, I think maybe if there was one other moment that tipped the dominoes, it was probably GitHub Copilot. But once you could see AI write code, but unfortunately, that particular manifestation, nobody really could figure out how did that translate to other software categories. So it was kind of just stuck in GitHub Copilot land. ChatGPT sort of opened it up as, okay, this is relevant for everything that we're doing.
Yeah, and I know speaking to people who work for like large organizations, some of the fear internally at some of these big companies is like is security of data, right? Like when their employees are using like ChatGPT, like they're teaching the model things, and then also like trade secrets. Like what if the GPT goes and shares that with another competitor, or something like that. And so there's been a lot of talk around that, but it's interesting for Box because it's like this closed environment for companies that has, you've built that trust over time. And so they can kind of trust you as an organization or to sort of keep that within, that confined sort of ecosystem, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, our brand sort of position and value proposition is we're going to work the hardest to keep your data safe and secure and private, and in accordance to all the compliance requirements that you have for your business. And then when AI enters the picture, that has to also be met. Even in a world of AI. So when you have a world of AI agents that can go off and do work for you on your data, that the work that they're going to do is going to be within the context of your privacy settings, your compliance requirements, your security model. It's not going to leak data. There's no training of any information into the AI model. That's sort of our brand promise, and that's our architectural, basically, promise that we've built as a platform. So for us, it's the best way to think about it is just what if you had intelligence built into the way that you work with your data, and you had the same thing that humans do to content today, whether it's a movie script, a contract, an invoice, a video, whatever that information is. If a human can do it with their data, AI will be able to do it as well. And we're building a platform that lets you deploy that AI against your information.
On a more macro level, I know you're generally a very big optimist about technology and artificial intelligence specifically and everything. But on the flip side, is there anything that keeps you up at night about it? Like in terms of long-term things that we should, not that it's going to happen, but it's more like things that we should, as citizens of the world, look out for and just be careful of?
Yeah, I think AI is absolutely, it's critical that we care about safety, security. There's copyright issues that still need to be worked through. So this is not the case that we can just sort of, it's a panacea and we can close our eyes and it's all going to be amazing. But I kind of think about it akin to any other technology. The internet, if we did not, manage security properly, the internet would have been the greatest sort of security risk of humanity of all time, because you have every electronic device basically connected up to each other, and you'd be able to just hack into anything. And we obviously see that all day long. But the industry kind of raises the bar and then adds more and more security to everything that we're doing. AI will require the same exact thing. We will have to upgrade a lot of our infrastructure and a lot of our approaches to what we will connect up to an AI model. So I think that the key is to not think about AI risk in a vacuum, as if there's not going to be another parallel set of ways of mitigating that risk. We will see a risk, we will mitigate it, because I think we as humans want to live in a fair and just and safe society, and so we don't want AI running around doing things to us or in conflict with our interests. But I'm more in the camp of we will control it, and we have the controls for it, and we have no evidence thus far that we can't control it. So I'm more of an optimist of its ability to be controlled and delivered safely.
Yeah. For any entrepreneur who has like a big goal and wants to go out and create a real like huge business and impact the world in a positive way, a lot of times when you ask like what their kind of overall vision is like they want to build something that lives longer than they do, and once, after they're gone, it's still like the sustainable thing. Do you feel like you've done that with Box? Like, is this something that you think will just live, for the foreseeable future, a very long time, even after you're gone?
I'm not at a stage in life where I'm thinking at that altitude of my life. Maybe we'll just podcast in 10 or 20 years, and I'll decide if I'm a bit more philosophical on that. I think I'm a bit more practical, which is the world continues to have problems that need to be solved. There's going to be thousands and thousands of companies that are necessary to solve those problems. We're going to be one of those companies that helps just create progress. Hopefully, we do it better than many other companies. Hopefully, the mark we leave will be through the outcomes that our customers achieve. So if we can help, a medical, a life sciences company deliver a new breakthrough drug faster, if we can help NASA get to space in new ways faster, if we can deliver, enable the Disneys of the world to create better entertainment more efficiently, like these are all just good things for us, our view for society. And so our job is to build software that does that.
Yep.
And that's the impact we want to have. And so, in 100 years from now, hopefully we will have made our mark by what the organizations did during this time that used our technology, and be fantastic if Box's is still around doing that in whatever the world looks like in 100 years from now. But right now we're just focused on let's build amazing software that lets people do incredible work.
That's awesome. I saw that I saw a video of you, an older video of you juggling. Do you have any other hidden talents that we should know about?
I think that's the end of my talents. So now you've listed everyone that I've done. Would you ever
do stand-up comedy? I feel like you'd be great at it.
Why not? That sounds like the worst thing of all time.
It's not about that life.
I don't want to be instantly judged by an audience like that. So that sounds too stressful.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, this has been such a pleasure. Really appreciate you joining, and really love the conversation. Learned a lot, and wishing you all the best moving forward. You and Box, and hope to catch you again soon.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Take care.